From the day I set my eyes on you, I despised you. I hate that my son's eyes sparkles when he's with you. I hate that you're pretty. I hate your children.
Why, Mother? They're your grandchildren, for crying out loud. She made you a grandmother. She loves you, Mother. She respects you so much.
I don't care. She took you from me. You're mine, Zane. She and her kids are taking your love, and that makes me so jealous and angry. You should love me alone, Zane.
Hi, my name is Nari. I celebrated my 28th birthday a week ago with my husband, our children, and a few extended families, excluding my mother-in-law. Why? She's somewhere very far away from us and is better off there. I've been married to Zane, my husband, for 4 years. The period before our marriage was one of the toughest periods I'd ever experienced. Zane proposed to me after a year of us dating. 2 weeks later, he decided to introduce me to his parents. His father made me comfortable, but I noticed how quiet his mother was. It made me feel quite nervous, as I'd hoped she'd take a liking to me immediately. Zane had said quite a lot of good things about her, so I was expecting to see the woman he described her to be, but it was the opposite.
You didn't tell me you were in a relationship, Zane, and you proposed marriage to her?
It felt weird that she seemed upset over that, but I tried to justify her anger. I thought we truly should have visited earlier. Before Zane could speak, I apologized to her. I explained that our late visit wasn't intentional. Her reply threw me off balance.
I was speaking to my son, not you. Be quiet and let him speak.
I apologized again and let out a sigh, allowing Zane to speak. He explained to her that he'd wanted to make it a surprise for her and asked if she was proud of him. This time, she gave no reply. She stood up and immediately walked out of the living room. I didn't know what to do. Her husband apologized on her behalf with the excuse that she was having a bad day. I figured later on that he lied after visiting thrice more and getting the same reaction from her. When I birthed my son, everyone was overjoyed, except my mother-in-law. She refused to come see the baby until her husband forced her to come with him 3 months later. "Would you like to hold the child, Mother?" I asked her. She agreed and took the baby. I was overjoyed when she proposed to me, and the baby going over to her place to stay for a few days. I agreed, as she said she felt better seeing the baby. Zane's job had him always traveling, so he wasn't home at the time. When his parents left, I texted him about the new developments. "Your parents came over. You won't believe what your mother suggested."
What's that?
"Your mom asked me and the baby to go over and spend a few days with her. I'm so excited, Zane."
I am too. I guess the baby made her realize how important you are.
"I guess so. I'll start preparing. Take care."
I love you and the baby.
"We love you too." 3 days later, I arrived at the home of his parents with my child. The first day was great. I had a few conversations with his parents. My son and I were showered with love. That night, as I went to sleep, my mother-in-law asked me to leave him in the room Zane grew up in. According to her, she'd arranged it for him, and he'd feel his father's love there. I agreed. Even though I loved him sleeping beside me, I thought my mother-in-law's suggestion was good for him. And after getting him to sleep, I retired to the room prepared for me. A few minutes later, I also fell asleep. I was forcefully awoken by a sharp cry. I sprang up from my bed and rushed into the room my son was sleeping in, and to my utmost shock, a needle had pierced his skin deeply. I screamed and picked him up, tears already forming a cloud in my eyes. My husband's parents dashed into the room and asked what was wrong. "A needle is stuck in Kai's thigh," I screamed. My father-in-law swung into action and quickly took him from me. We left for a nearby hospital in his car. The needle was taken out and the wound got treated. Luckily, it didn't hit anything serious. On our way home, I got a call from my husband.
What happened, Nari? Mother told me you were careless with Kai, and a needle got stuck in him. I know you to be a careful person, Nari. How could this happen?
I was shocked. She called him before me and labeled me a careless mother. I explained to Zane that his mother had suggested that Kai sleep in his former room, and I had no idea that a needle was left lying there. It seemed as though he rolled over and got pierced by it. Zane seemed to understand, but warned me to be more careful next time. I was hurt. How could they think I'd be careless with my son? I did apologize and didn't confront my mother-in-law. However, the next day, I took our things and prepared to return to my house. My mother-in-law seemed unbothered. I explained to my father-in-law that I feel we'd be better at my home. I didn't visit them again. 3 years later, I got pregnant again. We didn't inform my husband's parents until I was 1 week away from my due date. My mother-in-law flared up.
You were pregnant all this time. How could you keep it away from us? It would have been better to keep on leaving it as a secret then.
It was my idea to keep it away from them. My reason was to surprise everyone after my delivery. However, the doctor informed us that I needed enough rest throughout the week. My husband thought it would be better to ask his mother to come help me out since mine had passed on. I agreed. After we apologized for keeping it away from her, my husband told her the reason we went against our initial plans to tell no one. However, she refused to come stay with me.
She's not only secretive, but lazy. I'm not coming.
No matter how much we tried to convince her, she stood on her words. Left with no option, I had to call my best friend. She helped me throughout the week, more than I expected. Finally, a week and a few days later, my daughter was born. My mother-in-law refused to visit me at the hospital. My best friend and father-in-law took care of me until I was discharged, as Zane was away on a business trip. My best friend spent 2 more weeks with us before she left, leaving my kids and I alone. Zane returned home after a month, and I felt at peace. He was overjoyed to meet our daughter, who we named Meera. He spent a week with us before he had to travel again. 2 weeks later, he suddenly called me in the middle of the night. According to him, his mother called him in tears. She told him she'd been trying to reach me, but I was ignoring her calls. I was shocked. I hadn't even gotten a single call from her. I explained to Zane that I'd been with my phone all day and hadn't gotten any call from her. He was confused. I assured him that I'd call her to hear what she had to say. When I did, she was in tears, apologizing for not visiting for such a long time because she was angry. I was touched by her apology. She informed me that she'd be coming the next day and would be spending a week with us. I was glad. Finally, someone else would be with us again. She arrived the next day and was visibly excited to see the kids. The day after, I had to restock our groceries. My mother-in-law offered to come with me and asked that we bring the kids with us. I'd never taken them with me, but I agreed because she wanted to. We left home after noon and arrived at the store 30 minutes later. My mother-in-law took Meera in her stroller while I held Kai. I went around with my son, thinking my mother-in-law was right beside us. It was when I turned that I realized she wasn't behind us anymore. I felt panic surge through me. I looked around for her for nearly 5 minutes before I spotted her walking out of the restroom. I'd have felt relieved, but it only increased my panic. She wasn't with my daughter. I rushed toward her and grabbed her. "Mother, where's Meera?" She stared at me in confusion.
Meera, I left her with you, Nari. Before I left for the bathroom, I told you to look after her.
"No, you didn't," I screamed. She surely didn't say anything to me. I shook her violently, demanding for my child, but she flared up. She called me a careless mother, a liar, and every vile name she could think of. Our noise attracted a few people. Some pitied me and offered to look around for Meera while someone quickly contacted the police to report the situation. Others sided with my mother-in-law. The police soon arrived at the same time my best friend did. She helped me hold Kai while I went around with everyone in search of my daughter. My mother-in-law was nowhere to be found after the police appeared. No matter how much we looked, we couldn't find my daughter. I couldn't stop crying. The police promised to do their best in finding my daughter, but that couldn't stop my tears. My best friend took me home. 2 hours later, Zane burst into the house.
How could you, Nari? How could you be so careless with our daughter? You did the same for Kai. This is unlike you, Nari. Why?
I wasn't careless with her, I yelled back. I was not only sad but angry and disappointed at him. I knew his mother had called him. "Meera was with your mother. She forced me to take them with me to the store. My child was with her." I screamed in tears. My best friend had to take me into my room to help my anger disappear. Zane said no other word to him. Luckily, 3 hours later, the police contacted me to inform me that a woman had brought a child to the station and asked to come see if she was mine. I dashed out of the room immediately, ignoring Zane and my best friend's advice to slow down. We all arrived at the station. Seeing the child, I immediately recognized her. It was my Meera. I screamed and grabbed her, hugging her tightly as tears of joy streamed down my eyes. I was told that she was found at the far end of the back of the store. I turned to Zane. "Do you think I'd take my child and leave her there?" He looked away, unable to say a word. I requested for the CCTV at the store to be checked. We followed the police there, and when it was checked, we discovered that my mother-in-law had taken Meera away without me noticing. Zane was disappointed. He immediately apologized for blaming me.
I want her arrested immediately. My daughter could have been kidnapped or even killed.
They got to work immediately and headed to his parents' house where they arrested my mother-in-law. When we went to visit her at the station, she didn't show even a bit of remorse.
I hope you die with your useless kids. We don't need you. Zane doesn't need you. He's fine with me, you wench. You came in and destroyed our relationship. I hate you.
I was at a loss for words. She wanted my kids and I dead? I thought back to when Kai was pierced by a needle. Why did I not ask why the needle was there in the first place? She could have intentionally put it there.
From the day I set my eyes on you, I despised you. I hate that my son's eyes sparkles when he's with you. I hate that you're pretty. I hate your children.
Why, Mother? They're your grandchildren, for crying out loud. She made you a grandmother. She loves you, Mother. She respects you so much.
I don't care. She took you from me. You're mine, Zane. She and her kids are taking your love, and that makes me so jealous and angry. You should love me alone, Zane.
We were surprised to hear her say that. It sounded completely absurd. That wasn't something a normal mom would say.
I birthed you, Zane. I've always loved you. These people can't love you as much as I do. You shouldn't associate yourself with them.
Well, Mother, those people are my wife and children, and I love them with my whole existence. You're being insanely strange right now, and I can't stand it. If you love me, you're going to love them too.
We left the station, different thoughts racing through our minds. I voiced out to Zane that her words weren't normal, and he agreed. It was quite hard on him, realizing his mother's obsession with him, but I was able to help him through it. She was charged with child endangerment and was restricted from going anywhere near us, and also asked to pay a fine of $20,000. We continued our lives, thinking it was all over. One day, late into the night, Zane and I were meditating in the living room with the lights turned off when we heard strange sounds outside. We quickly went to check through the window and saw two masked figures trying to jump in. Zane swung into action and contacted the police while I rushed to the kids' room. I woke them up and took them up to a safe room before going down. The men had already got in. Zane and I unlocked our front door and positioned ourselves on both sides, holding a stick I'd gotten from the kitchen. I'd wanted to experiment with them earlier. Luckily, I decided to leave them until the next day. Once they opened it, Zane and I hammered the sticks on their heads continuously until they collapsed on the floor. I quickly fetched some ropes and Zane tied them tightly to each other while we awaited the police arrival. They came and took the men away. We couldn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day we headed to the station and were informed that the men confessed that they'd been sent by someone to murder my kids and I. Of course, it was no one but my mother-in-law. Since she couldn't attack us herself, she sent others. She was instantly arrested again.
Zane belongs to me. I own him. I'll never let you all live. My son is mine.
Zane concluded that it wasn't safe to stay in that state anymore. He decided to relocate us to England, alongside my father-in-law, who expressed his wish to never want to set eyes on her ever again. My mother-in-law and the men she hired were charged with attempted murder and given 10-year sentences of jail term each. Once she was behind bars, we all went to England to start a new life without her. It's been 5 years of peace without her. Meera and Kai are grown now, and we ensure to never talk about her to them. I asked Zane and my father-in-law once if they missed her, but they both confessed that they didn't. According to them, a woman who was so obsessed with her son and harbored so much hate for her son's wife and kids, and even attempted more than once to get rid of them, shouldn't be in their lives.
I love her, but I can't justify her actions. In fact, I'm ashamed to call her my wife. We're happy this way, and that's all that matters. When she's out, I'll ensure she never sees us until her death.
Well, what can I say? We all want a home without trouble, don't we?
A second after I rushed into her room, both my father and Sabrina rushed in as well. What the hell happened in here?
Seth attacked me. He tore my clothes off and was trying to force himself on me. He touched me all over and made me touch him, and he was about to rape me. Please keep him away from me.
What? That isn't true. I was just in my bedroom when I heard her scream.
Seth, how could you? This is beyond terrible. I'm calling the police.
I swear I didn't do anything. Dad, you have to believe me. I swear that I would never do something like this. She's lying. My father was stunned and silent. I knew that he wanted to believe me, but Emily was very convincing, and he didn't know who to trust. But in order to please Sabrina and act right according to her, my dad punched me several times. Minutes later, police showed up and dragged me down to the police station for questioning. They grilled me for hours about what happened, but wouldn't let me answer their questions with more than just a yes or no answer. Hi everyone, my name is Seth, and I wish that I could say that I was going to share with you a happy story, but what I am going to tell you is a cautionary tale. I had no idea that such things could happen to someone, and honestly, I'm just grateful with how things eventually worked out. Let me start off by saying that my mother passed away when I was very young, and I barely knew her really. My father had taken her passing quite hard, and for many years, he hadn't even thought about dating. But when I was 18 and getting ready to apply to colleges, he decided that it was past time for him to start looking for someone. And sure enough, after a few months, he began dating Sabrina. Sabrina was a pretty nice person, a bit hot-headed, but I thought she was a good match for my father. Her daughter Emily, however, was a bit of a brat. She was 15 and felt very entitled. The first time that we met, I knew that we wouldn't get along well. Sabrina and Emily came over to our house for the first time, and I was showing Emily around the house when she showed me just how entitled that she actually was. Hi Emily, welcome to our home. So this is my room, and you'll be staying just down the hall in the room across from the bathroom.
It smells weird in here.
Sorry about that. I like to burn incense from time to time.
Yeah, whatever. Hey, is this your laptop? I need to borrow it.
Sorry, but I need it for schoolwork. In fact, I need to work on a school project right now. But you can use the family desktop out in the living room if you want to get on the internet.
Why can't you just let me use this one? I don't want to sit out in the living room.
Well, because I need it right now for school. There's software on it that the desktop computer can't run.
Ugh, whatever. Selfish prick.
I was so confused by her reaction, but I just figured that things were still really new and probably a bit uncomfortable for her, so I just let it slide. But that was only the first sign that something wasn't right. After all, they were supposed to spend a couple weeks at our place, and that was a very long time for them to be away from their home. A couple of days later, I got home from visiting a friend and was going to work on my laptop when I couldn't find it anywhere in my room. I searched everywhere, and then went to ask Emily if she had seen it around the house. When I walked in her room to talk to her, I found her using it. Hey, I thought I told you that you couldn't use that. Please don't take my things without my permission.
Oh, whatever, loser. It's not even truly yours. Your dad probably bought it for you, therefore it belongs to the family.
No, I bought that laptop with my own money from my part-time job. But even if I didn't, you aren't family, at least not yet. Our parents are only dating, they aren't married. I reached out and grabbed my laptop away from her, and she screamed at the top of her lungs, which alarmed Sabrina and my father, who came rushing into the room. What's going on in here?
Seth stormed in here and punched me in the stomach because I borrowed his laptop for a few minutes. Why did you do that? It really hurt.
I didn't do anything. I just came in here to find my laptop. She asked to borrow it, and I had told her no, so I just came to get it back. I swear I didn't lay a hand on her.
Well, this sounds like a big misunderstanding, but it had better not happen again. The two of you need to get along and behave like adults. And Seth, I'll keep an eye on you. I want to believe you, but Emily has never lied to me before.
I felt like I had lost my mind. How could Sabrina believe Emily over me? After all, Emily didn't have a mark on her, but I was still the bad guy. After that, I started avoiding any interaction with Emily at all costs, but she wouldn't leave me alone. The next day, she casually walked into my room with a devilish smirk on her face.
Your room is almost twice the size of mine. I think we should switch rooms.
Why would I do that? You don't live here. You'll only be sleeping here for another week, so why would I switch rooms?
It's in your best interest to switch rooms. I can promise you that. And if you don't, then I'll make sure that you regret it.
After that, she stormed off. after what had happened the previous day. I knew that I would need to be careful around her. Something told me that she was incredibly unstable and vengeful. In order to protect myself, I bought myself a few cameras and linked them up to my laptop, so that as they recorded, they sent their recordings to the laptop. I had bought a camera for my room that I hid on my bookshelf, a body cam that looked like a button that I made sure to pin to my shirt each day, and another that placed in the hallway outside my room. It was a bit of overkill, I know, but there was no way that I was going to be accused of something I didn't do without having the evidence to prove that I was innocent. At least that was the plan. The next day, I could tell that Emily was upset with me for refusing to swap rooms. She kept passing by my room and glaring at me. Part of me figured that she wanted me to confront her and talk to her, but I was not leaving the safety of my room. Suddenly, I heard her scream out in pain and start crying up a storm. I rushed out of my room to find her in her bedroom on her bed. She was half naked, and the little clothing she had on was torn and in shambles. A second after I rushed into her room, both my father and Sabrina rushed in as well.
What the hell happened in here?
Seth attacked me. He tore my clothes off and was trying to force himself on me. He touched me all over and made me touch him, and he was about to rape me. Please keep him away from me.
What? That isn't true. I was just in my bedroom when I heard her scream.
Seth, how could you? This is beyond terrible. I'm calling the police.
I swear I didn't do anything. Dad, you have to believe me. I swear that I would never do something like this. She's lying. My father was stunned and silent. I knew that he wanted to believe me, but Emily was very convincing, and he didn't know who to trust. But in order to please Sabrina and act right according to her, my dad punched me several times. Minutes later, police showed up and dragged me down to the police station for questioning. They grilled me for hours about what happened, but wouldn't let me answer their questions with more than just a yes or no answer. Finally, I demanded that I be given a lawyer, and that gave me a chance to breathe. As soon as my lawyer came into the room, I told them that they needed to get me my laptop as it had proof that I hadn't assaulted Emily. They asked what I meant, and I told them about my camera setup and that I had been recording all day. As luck would have it, the laptop was taken in as evidence, and my lawyer was allowed to review it and the footage that was on it. It showed that Emily had been lying and that I hadn't been anywhere near her. With the evidence that I was innocent, the police let me go and I was allowed to return home. As soon as I did, I showed my father and Sabrina the same footage, and the two of them apologized profusely. But that wasn't nearly enough. My father kicked both Sabrina and Emily out of the house. It hurt, since Sabrina hadn't really done anything, but there was no way that my father was going to allow Emily to stay in our house, let alone in our lives anymore. She had already falsely accused me twice of hurting her, and there would not be a third time. For the first time in weeks, I felt comfortable in my own home, and my father begged me to forgive him for bringing that crazy person into our lives. Of course, I accepted his apology. After all, it's not like he knew that she was crazy. After that, I posted my story and pictures of Emily on my social media accounts. The story went viral, and people all over the country knew about what she had tried to do. There were even a few people that commented on my posts, saying that she had done similar things to them as well, and had gotten them in trouble all because they had pissed her off. So, from what I heard since after my post, she had been kidnapped and have actually been sexually assaulted. Unfortunately, the guys have not been caught, and now no one believes she's saying the truth, due to her false claims before. Now, years later, I am in my last year of college, and I couldn't be happier. If I hadn't been paranoid and gotten all those cameras, though, there's no telling how differently things could have turned out. My father is dating someone again, but she has no children of her own, and I am happy to say that we get along very well. I truly do hope that she and my father end up getting married, as they make each other very happy. I'm not sure whatever happened to Sabrina, but I doubt that she has had an easy life having a crazy woman for a daughter. I have heard from several people that know her that she has had a very difficult life. No one wants to hire her as they are afraid that she will make up lies about them or their employees and cause drama. Plus, no one wants to date her as they don't want to be falsely accused of assault. From what I hear, she is quite the lonely and miserable person, and after what she tried to do to me, I find it very hard to have any sympathy for her at all. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
I was 10 years old when Martin was born, and my mom immediately handed him off to me so I could take care of him instead. I protested and said I didn't know how to take care of a baby, but she just told me to figure it out. My name is Amelia, and I'm 25 years old. I moved out of my mother's house just a few years ago, and I've been trying to get my life put together since. See, ever since my younger brother Martin and I were young, our mom always treated us like her own personal servants, and that we only exist to help her with the chores around the house. This was the exact reason my dad left her in the first place, and I still wonder why he never took us with him. I was 10 years old when Martin was born, and my mom immediately handed him off to me so I could take care of him instead. I protested and said I didn't know how to take care of a baby, but she just told me to figure it out. For a long time after that, I was his primary caretaker. And all the while, our mother was always bugging me about the chores around the house. She always wanted me to do everything, from cleaning the floors to vacuuming every room, to all of the yard work and gardening, too. While I was busting my butt, trying to take care of everything and make sure Martin wasn't neglected, our mother just sat on the side watching me, like she couldn't be bothered to help. I never really understood how strange that is until my friends and I talked about it during high school.
Ugh, it's so unfair. My mom says I have to do the dishes for the entire week as a punishment.
I don't get it. What's the problem? Doesn't your mom always make you do the dishes?
No, a different person does them each night.
Amelia, does your mom force you into doing the dishes every night?
Well, yeah. And not just the dishes either. I have to do everything around the house and take care of Martin on top of that. It's how it's always been in our house. At the time, I didn't know why Jenny and Mia gave me a couple of weird looks. But now I understand.
Amelia, that's not normal for parents to do to their kids.
What? Of course it is.
No, it isn't. In my house, everyone takes turns doing the chores, and our parents are the ones raising the kids.
At the time, I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I'd been raised having to do everything around the house myself while my mom just sat back and told me what I was doing wrong. To me, that was normal. I hadn't considered that maybe she was taking advantage of me like that. I couldn't stop thinking about it when I got home that day. As soon as I walked in through the door, my mom ordered me to do the chores like she always did. I knew I shouldn't and that I should confront her about what she'd been forcing me to do all my life. But then I remembered Martin. Eventually, our mom would start forcing him to do exactly what I've been doing, but he was just a child. Until he grew up some more, I was the only person taking care of him, and I had to put his well-being first. So I just did as my mother ordered. I didn't want her taking out her anger on Martin if I didn't. And I never blamed Martin for me being forced to take care of him. It's not like it was his fault or anything. Besides, if I didn't take care of him, I knew our mother wouldn't, and I didn't want him to feel like he was alone growing up. But as the years passed and I grew closer and closer to graduation, I couldn't help feeling resentment towards our mother, and I yearned to be free of her. I didn't want to be stuck in the house, slaving away at every chore with her behind me, telling me I'm doing everything wrong. It got to the point where I couldn't even look at her without feeling all the anger I'd been bottling up for years. One day, it finally exploded. I came home from school that day, and as soon as I set my bag down, my mom was in the room ordering me around.
There you are. The attic needs to be cleaned out now. Get to it.
No.
What do you mean, no?
You can't boss me around and treat me like your personal maid anymore. I'm your child, and you've treated me like some kind of cleaning staff and personal chef for my entire life.
You're my child. You're supposed to do whatever I tell you.
No, I'm not. I'm supposed to do chores and look after my brother, but I'm not supposed to slave away for you all the time. And I won't do it anymore.
How dare you disobey your mother?
How dare you treat your kids like they only exist to serve you? You're a terrible mother. You don't deserve to have children. I didn't let her get another word in and ran up to my room. My friend Mia and her parents could let me stay at their house until after we graduated that week. And after that, I would be off to find a place for myself in a nearby town. Mia, Jenny, and I had planned for that a few months prior, and we saved up some money so we could move in together. As I was packing my bag, Martin ran into the room crying.
Amelia, please don't go.
I'm sorry, Martin, but I have to. I can't just stay here anymore and deal with our mother every day.
What am I gonna do without you?
I don't know, but I promise. When I'm able to, I'll come back and get you out of this house, okay?
Do you promise?
I promise. I'll come back for you. I left the house that night, and after graduation later that same week, I didn't go back. It wasn't easy for me. I never wanted to leave Martin in the sole care of our mother, because I knew that she would just force him to do everything in the house now that I was gone. I also couldn't help the feeling that I had betrayed him by escaping that house. Without me there wasn't anyone left to care about him and make sure his needs were getting met. Our mother certainly wasn't about to start caring about him the way I had. That thought was almost enough to make me consider staying and enduring more of our mother's awful behavior. But I left anyway. My friends and I moved to a nearby town, and at first we could only afford a small apartment together. I needed to support myself and also save up enough money to take care of Martin once I brought him with me, so we all had to save as much money as we could. I asked another one of my friends still in our hometown to keep me updated on my mother and Martin and to watch them from a distance. After a couple of years, my friend informed me of an incident that happened with my mother and Martin while one of her friends, Marianne, was visiting. I knew Marianne well, unfortunately. My mother would invite her over a few times a week, and they would both delight in ordering me around, trying to do everything for them all at once, and then make fun of me when I couldn't get it all done. To hear that she was doing the same thing to Martin made my blood boil. My friend who heard the story from Marianne the next day told me that our mother and Marianne had forced Martin to clean the house right in front of them, and then deliberately got the rooms dirty again and forced him to start all over, calling him names as he did so. I remember when our mother would do that to me, and how frustrated I became with having to clean the same room multiple times, not to mention the harassment too. I made a decision then that it was time to finally get Martin away from our mother and into a house that actually cares about him. I traveled back to our hometown and went back to my mother's house. As soon as I got to the door, I heard yelling inside and I rushed into the house. I found my mother and Martin in the living room, him cleaning up something on the floor, while she stood over him shouting. Neither one of them seemed to notice me as I got my phone out and started recording.
Oh, you stupid, stupid boy. Do you know how much money I spent on that?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You're going to pay for that.
I caught my mother dragging Michael up by his arm, and as she raised her arm to hit him, I stepped into the room. Don't you dare lay a hand on him. My mother was shocked by my sudden entrance, and froze when she saw the phone in my hand. Michael broke free of her grip and ran over to me with tears still in his eyes.
At your back, you...
And I'm here to rescue Martin from you.
Can't do that. I'm still his mother. He needs me.
No, he needs to be loved and cared for, and he'll never have that when he's with you. I'm taking him to live with me and make sure you never get your hands on him ever again. I left the house with Martin and immediately went to get a lawyer so I could get full custody of my younger brother. We went to court, and with the video I took, as well as my friend's recollection of what happened with Marianne, I was awarded full custody of Martin. My mother and Marianne were both charged with child abuse, and my mother was charged with child neglect and ended up in jail because of it. Meanwhile, I took Martin back home to live with me and my friends. We all chipped in to make sure his needs were being met, and I always reminded him that everyone takes turns in maintaining the house, so he never had to feel like it was his responsibility alone. After a couple of years, I was able to move me and Martin into a small house, and we've been living comfortably ever since. From what I hear, my mother couldn't get a job anywhere because of her arrest and her past being exposed, so she couldn't afford to keep her house. And with the way she spent money on lavish and expensive things my whole life, she didn't have any savings to fall back on. Martin and I couldn't be any happier, though, now that we're finally away from her, and we're able to live our lives without having to worry about serving someone else. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. When I came into the house, I was surprised when she accused me of stealing her jewelry. She took out my purse and found a pearl necklace that her husband had gifted her years earlier. She also says she discovered other jewelry items in my purse, which she said I stole. I denied taking anything, and the next thing you know, the police were called and I was handcuffed. I protested my innocence. I never stole your jewelry, Gertrude.
Who else would do it, you snake? You stole my son and now you want to steal my jewelry?
I don't even wear jewelry. Did you ever dream about getting married? Ever since I was a young girl, I always wanted to get married. I always wanted to live happily ever after, just like my parents. All my mom told me was to find one good man and everything would be good. She said, "Go ahead and find your prince. He's out there and be prepared. Always wear fresh underwear." Good advice, right? She forgot to tell me some other things that are just as important. Let me say that I had no idea that getting married meant being attached to my husband's mother-in-law, Gertrude. Let's start from the beginning. My name is Lindsay, and I am the only daughter of my parents, who are both hardworking former sales clerks. I went to university and took up a political science degree. As one of my electives, I decided to take an acting course. There was a cute guy there, and his name was Russell. During the semester, I enjoyed my acting classes and especially my scenes with Russell in the play, Romeo and Juliet. I played Juliet to Russell, who played Romeo, and we had to kiss. This was the day that I fell in love. After the class, we talked some more, and before long, we were dating. I graduated from university and started working with the government. And Russell also landed a job working for the post office. One day during Valentine's Day, Russell proposed and I accepted. We got married at City Hall. After that, Russell decided he needed to introduce me to my mother-in-law, Gertrude. I am so happy to meet your mother, Russell.
I love my mom. She's a bit needy, but that's because my father died a few years ago. Be patient with her. She may come across as loud, but that's because she doesn't go out much.
I understand. Sorry about your dad. At the dinner, she kept giving me rude looks, and she also made some nasty comments in front of Russell, who acted as if he didn't notice. She accused me of making Russell get married to him without her permission. She also said that I didn't know how to wear makeup, and that I looked uncomfortable wearing a dress, and seemed better suited to wear jeans and a t-shirt. One day, she also showed up for my romantic birthday dinner and tried to ruin it for me. Even though I am only 24 years old, she said I didn't look a day over 40. She also said that my dress looked like it was bought from a thrift store, and did I buy it there? I was furious. I had a conversation with my husband afterwards. Your mother ruined my birthday dinner by insulting me and making me feel old.
You are being too serious. She was just joking.
If that's her way of joking, then that's not nice what she said about me. I never wanted her at my birthday dinner.
She's my only mother. I'm her only son, and she is just showing me cares about us.
I decided to put my birthday dinner behind me, but it still annoyed me that Russell and his mother were texting and talking to each other daily. Russell would even stop whatever he was doing to pick up the call from his mother. Even if he went to the bathroom, I would hear them talking to his mother, asking how his day was, and I even overheard her asking, "Where is that witch wife of yours?" One day he announced that his mother was going on a cruise and she wanted us to house sit while she was away. We had access to the swimming pool, as well as the indoor games. Russell said his mother was kind enough to let us stay at her place and enjoy ourselves with all her amenities. What happened was that when we got there, we had a list of things we had to clean while there, such as vacuuming all the carpets, cleaning her garage, and mowing her lawn. It wasn't a holiday at all. She also left us a box of seeds and vegetable plants, which we had to plant and water while she was away. The worst was yet to come. Exactly 2 weeks later, she came home while I was out planting her seeds. Russell went fishing with some friends and was not expected back for a few days. When I came into the house, I was surprised when she accused me of stealing her jewelry. She took out my purse and found a pearl necklace that her husband had gifted her years earlier. She also says she discovered other jewelry items in my purse, which she said I stole. I denied taking anything, and the next thing you know, the police were called and I was handcuffed. I protested my innocence. I never stole your jewelry, Gertrude.
Who else would do it, you snake? You stole my son and now you want to steal my jewelry?
I don't even wear jewelry. I couldn't believe my mother-in-law would purposely plant her jewelry and money in my purse to get back at me. I was humiliated, and when my husband came back from his trip, he tried to get me to calm down, but I couldn't. My husband told her she needed to drop the charges because I didn't own any jewelry and didn't wear any due to an allergy. Finally, Gertrude dropped the charges. Then I heard that my mother-in-law gave my husband an ultimatum. Either she goes or I go. As soon as he sided with me, I understood that my mother-in-law fainted and the ambulance was called. My husband rushed her to the hospital because he was worried she may have had a heart attack. I even went to the hospital, but she refused to see me, telling the nurses that I was not allowed to visit her. The doctors refused to release her unless she had someone to look after her. My husband agreed, and this meant that he was staying at her house for most of the week. We rarely got to see each other, and I was miserable most days. When will you come home?
Until my mother gets better.
When will that be?
The doctor didn't say. It could be a while. I can't even leave her alone without her getting upset.
But what about me?
It's your fault she is in the hospital. You are always shouting at each other.
I was upset at my husband and mother-in-law for stealing my husband away from me. I knew Gertrude was faking her illness and had to prove it. She claimed to have limited mobility and told everyone she could no longer drive. I decided to put this to the test. I had someone deliver a heavy package on the door containing some kitchenware. When my friend, Sam, rang the doorbell, my mother-in-law opened the door in a wheelchair. As soon as she was told she was the winner of a brand new set of kitchenware, she got out of her chair and picked up the box. My friend also told her she also won a bike. My mother-in-law grabbed the bike I bought, and she began biking around the block. With my video evidence, I showed this to my husband via email.
I am so sorry that my mom is such a liar. She faked her entire illness. She also lied to me, her company, and especially my wife. How can I get you to forgive me?
It's been 2 months and you never wanted to listen to me. It was always about your mother. I have had enough, Russell.
Don't be like that. Please forgive me. My mother needs me.
I finally told him that I was going to divorce him because he finally showed me his true face. I tried to forget about Russell and my horrible mother-in-law, and slowly, I began to pick up the pieces. Almost every week, Russell would try to win me back, but I would never pick up the phone. He told me before I blocked him that his mother got fired from her longtime job as a legal secretary because she lied about her medical illness. Russell told me that they are both at risk of bankruptcy because his mom couldn't keep up with the house payments. In addition, he told me that he caused a car accident and needed to pay a large fine because he didn't have any car insurance. He asked me for money, but I flat out turned him down. I told him it was all his fault and his problems were not my problems anymore. Meanwhile, I tried to put everything behind me and went to work and took a yoga class to feel better. At one of the classes, my yoga teacher, Matthew, invited me out for coffee and we found out that we had lots in common. Things were going great for us and I asked if I could meet his parents. Matthew laughed and said that his parents are happily living in Europe. We are now planning our wedding. After I explained my previous mother-in-law's problem, Matthew assured me that his parents do not ever want to move in with us because they enjoy living in Europe so much. So please be aware that if you have a mean mother-in-law, she's going to get punished sooner or later. Don't be mad, just get prepared. Do you think I was too mean to my ex-husband? Their house was very dilapidated and looked like it was seconds away from falling apart. Once Tobias parked the car, he then pulled my luggage out of the trunk and threw it to the ground and began to violently search through it until he found my passport. Once he did, he scooped it up and put it in pocket. Hey, that's mine. What are you doing?
Quiet, silly girl. You belong to us now, and without this, you won't be able to run away. Patricia gave you up for adoption when you were a baby without my knowing, but now we have you back, and you are our property.
I tried to reach out and grab the passport from him, and he easily shoved me away and then slapped me so hard that I... Hello there. My name is Jessica, and the past 2 years have been quite the roller coaster. I doubt what happened to me would happen to most people. But I want to tell you my story so that just in case hearing my story might help someone else. So let me start off by saying that I had pretty much always known that I was adopted. My parents had always felt that I should know this fact, but also that they loved me more than anything else in the world, and that they felt that adopting me was the best decision that they had ever made. They had adopted me when I was very young, and so they had been the only parents that I had ever known. And honestly, I had a very happy childhood. That is, until I turned 14. There was a terrible accident. My parents were on a yacht that belonged to a friend of theirs, and during a sudden and unexpected storm, the ship sank and they drowned. The whole experience scarred me and gave me an irrational fear of the water. After the funeral, my mother's sister Cecilia took me in and did her best to fill the void that had been left when my parents passed away. Thankfully, she was just as lovely as my mother had been, and I truly did love and appreciate everything that she was doing for me at the time. But the whole experience had opened up something in me. It made me realize that life was short and I wanted to know more about where I had come from. And so I began to do some investigative research to who my birth parents were.
Are you sure you want to know who they are? You might not like what you find out.
That is a possibility. But yeah. I would rather know that they are awful people than never know a thing about them. I don't know why, but it's just something that I have to do.
Well, I'm here to support you no matter what happens. Just don't forget that no matter what you find out, that you always have a home here with me. I love you, Jessica, and I only want the best for you.
My aunt was absolutely amazing. And more than once, I questioned whether I was doing the right thing, or if I should just give up and accept that my birth parents had given me up, and that my life was just separate from theirs. However, something made me keep looking. As a teenager, I didn't have a lot of resources as I didn't have money to hire a private investigator or anything, but I was pretty handy when it came to finding things on the internet, and I used a message board, and against all odds, I managed to find my birth parents. As it turned out, they were looking for me as well, and had posted some information about my adoption on the message board. Of course, I was careful, as I suspected that it might be a scam, and so I told my aunt, and we then privately messaged them to make sure that they were who they claimed to be, and they knew everything about my adoption, including where I was adopted from, who adopted me, and all of my medical history as well. Once I knew who they were, I began chatting with them every day, and we started to develop a bond. Things were going so well, in fact, that they invited me to come visit them during my summer break from school. They lived in another country, and the thought of going on a trip for the summer to a faraway land sounded exciting. The only real snag was that my aunt would be unable to come with me, as her job wouldn't allow her to take her vacation during the summer, as it was her busy season, but she did agree to let me go. Once the school year ended, I packed my bags and got on a plane bound for Greece. I knew that I should have slept on the flight there, but I was so excited that I just couldn't fall asleep. When I landed, I was greeted by my birth parents and found out their names were Tobias and Patricia. It felt awkward at first to finally meet them face to face, but that didn't last long. My mother threw her arms around me and kissed me dozens of times. We then got into their car and drove through the countryside until we arrived at their home, which was pretty remote. They even had a makeshift drawbridge that crossed a river that surrounded their property. I could tell that they really valued their privacy. Once we pulled up in front of their house, though, I had a sinking feeling come over me, and I began to get worried. Their house was very dilapidated, and looked like it was seconds away from falling apart. Once Tobias parked the car, he then pulled my luggage out of the trunk and threw it to the ground and began to violently search through it until he found my passport. Once he did, he scooped it up and put it in pocket. "Hey, that's mine. What are you doing?"
Quiet, silly girl. You belong to us now, and without this, you won't be able to run away. Patricia gave you up for adoption when you were a baby without my knowing, but now we have you back, and you are our property.
I tried to reach out and grab the passport from him, and he easily shoved me away and then slapped me so hard that I fell to the ground. Looking up at Patricia, I hoped that she would defend me, but she looked down at me on the ground and smiled.
Don't try anything foolish. The river that surrounds our home is very fast and you will drown if you try to cross it. And should you talk back or disobey us, being slapped is the least of your worries.
I had no idea what was going on, but I quickly learned that I needed to be careful what I said around them. After they stole my passport, they dragged me inside and showed me to a small room that had a straw mattress and a thin burlap sheet for a blanket but no pillow. Aside from that, the room was empty. That night I tried to sleep, but it was so cold and the straw offered no comfort at all. As soon as the sun came up, they put me to work. In the morning, they had me cleaning the entire house and preparing meals for the day. And in the afternoon, they had me doing yard work, clearing out the weeds from the garden and even chopping firewood. When the sun finally set, I was beyond exhausted, and Tobias locked me in my new bedroom. I had been planning on searching the home for a phone or a computer once Tobias and Patricia went to bed. But with the door locked, I was unable to do a search. The next day was the same, and the day after that, and the day after that. I was convinced that I was going to be living this nightmare for the rest of my life. Since I had no other options, I decided to try to have a talk with Patricia and appeal to her maternal instincts. I waited until I was alone with her and was sure that Tobias wouldn't overhear us. "Hey, Patricia. Why are you and Tobias doing this to me?"
You are our child, and as such, you need to do as we say. You were gone for 15 years and have a lot of work to make up for.
But how am I supposed to do that? Plus, you were the one to give me up. I never chose for you to put me up for adoption.
It was a mistake. but we will make you work hard until it is time for you to be married.
Married? I have no plans of getting married.
No, but we do. We have arranged to sell you to a wealthy family to marry their son. He is coming over in a few days to see you. After that, the two of you will be married and we will be wealthy. We will use the money to renovate or buy a new house, and then some savings for some stuffs I can't tell you. For now, keep working, or else you will be forced to see your future husband while having a black eye and a split lip.
I knew that her threat was all too real, and the idea that all this was just a ruse to get me in their hands just so they could sell me off was revolting, although it did give me a plan. There was no way of knowing if it would work, and it would mean that I would have to face a fear that had plagued me since my parents passed away when I was a child. I wish I could say that the days passed by quickly, but they were grueling and hard. But the morning came when I was to meet my future husband, and as I braced myself for another hard day's worth of work. Patricia unlocked and opened the door to my room. In her hands, she had a pretty purple dress.
Put this dress on. Malcolm will be here soon to make sure that you are worth marrying, and you better put on a good act. If he doesn't marry you, we shall make sure that you regret ever being born.
All I could do was nod my head and agree and hope that my plan would work. Once I was dressed, I was led outside and introduced to Malcolm, who turned out to be a middle-aged, heavy-set man. The way that he leered at me made me feel very uncomfortable. It was obvious that he rather liked how I looked, and, considering our age differences, it sent a shiver up my spine.
Okay, you two lovebirds go for a walk and talk and get to know each other. We keep an eye on you from a distance, though.
Malcolm walked over and offered me his arm so that he could lead me around. Against my better judgment, I accepted his offer and wrapped my arm around his and let him lead me away from the house. As we walked, he kept shifting his arm around to touch me. At first, he just rubbed my arm, but slowly he began rubbing my back and moving his arm slowly downwards. Before he could truly harass me, I made my move. Malcolm, do you think we could walk closer to the river? I find being near the water very romantic.
Of course, my dear. I would spend time with such a lovely creature as you anywhere.
He steered me towards the river, and as soon as we were close to the riverbank, he pulled me in close and tried to kiss me. He was so incredibly strong, but there was no way that I was going to let those monsters marry me off to this disgusting man. As he leaned in, I thrust my knee as hard as I could into his crotch, but rather than make my break at that moment, I kneed him a second time just to be sure. As he toppled to the ground, writhing in pain, I punched him in the face just for good measure before turning towards the river and running at full force. The thought of trying to swim across the water terrified me, but only half as much as staying and getting married to Malcolm. As I ran out into the water, I was surprised to find that it was only a foot deep, and as I waded across, it never got any deeper. Either it was an unseasonably dry time of year, or Tobias and Patricia had been bluffing about the river. At any rate, I made it across and then ran down the road as quickly as I could. I had seen a house down the road when they had first brought me here, and I ran towards it as fast as I could go and was relieved when I made it there before they managed to catch up to me. Once inside, I spoke to the family, who thankfully spoke English, and told them what had happened to me. The mother of the family quickly phoned the police, who showed up within 10 minutes. There were several police cars, and while one stayed with me to take my statement, the others raced down the road towards Patricia and Tobias's home. I later found out that the police had only arrived just in time to prevent Tobias, Patricia, and Malcolm from fleeing. All three were arrested on the spot. When they went to court, though, Malcolm received the lightest sentence since he hadn't actually done anything, but he had still attempted to marry a minor, and he was sentenced to a year in prison and over 1,000 hours of community service. As for Patricia and Tobias, they were sentenced to prison for life. Among their charges were kidnapping, abuse of a minor, trafficking of a minor, and attempting to resist arrest. Apparently, both of them wouldn't let the police handcuff them, and they fought back and were only subdued when the police used their stun guns on them. After that, I was finally able to return home to be with my aunt, who blamed herself for letting me go, although it wasn't even remotely her fault. After all, how were we supposed to know what kind of monsters those terrible people were? And there you have it. That's my story, and I hope by telling it that I might just help someone out. Be careful out there. Sometimes the least likely people are the worst monsters.
Ah, the poor little idiot is warning us. Maybe we should walk away then, huh?
And just like that, Jessica's mother lunged at me, trying to scratch my eyes out, but I was ready for her, and I grabbed her wrist and instead threw her through the air. Seeing his wife get thrown like that, her father then also lunged at me, but I was ready for him too, and I had pulled out my stun gun and I electrocuted him until he passed out. I've always considered myself a good man, and I can proudly say that I've always tried to do the right thing, but once I met my future mother and father-in-law, well, things change. Let me start at the beginning though. My name is Hugo, and I've had some problems in my dating life. I've dated some women that were very cruel to me, and some that just used me for my money. I knew that all women weren't like that, but I just had the misfortune for finding women that always seemed to fit that bill. But then I met Jessica. It was like one of those scenes from a cartoon where a man sees a woman and his heart begins beating out of his chest. She was so incredibly beautiful and had such a lovely voice, and I just had to find out if she was a good person, on top of being incredibly attractive as well. We both went to the same gym, and although it can be frowned upon to hit on other people while they are working out, I just needed to get to know this angel, and so I went up to her and introduced myself. As it turned out though, she was very soft-spoken and had a heart of gold. I knew instantly that she was the woman for me, and so I asked her out right on the spot, and I was taken aback when she said yes. The weeks and months passed, and we continued to see each other and grew closer with each passing day. Before long, we had told each other that we loved one another, and so I knew that it was time for us to introduce each other to our families. Jessica volunteered for hers to go first, and I was completely on board with the idea. After all, I knew that my family would absolutely adore Jessica, and while she tried to comfort me and assure me that her family would love me as well, I was still nervous, and as it turned out, I had every right to be. We decided to meet them at a restaurant, and on the way there, Jessica kept fidgeting. "Hey babe, what's wrong? You seem worried."
No, I'm okay. It's just been a while since I've introduced my parents to someone that I'd been seeing, so I'm just a bit nervous. It almost feels like I'm back in high school and introducing my first boyfriend to them.
Well, if they're anything like you, then this is going to go great. I'm a bit nervous too, but I'm sure they'll love me. Oh boy, was I wrong. When we entered the restaurant, I knew right away who Jessica's parents were. They were the only couple that looked like they wanted to murder someone. They were standing in the lobby and pacing back and forth. At first I wondered if we were incredibly late, or perhaps the restaurant had lost our reservation. Neither of which would be a good reason to be as enraged as they looked, but at least it would explain things. However, as we walked up to them, we found out the real reason.
Mom? Dad? Are you guys okay? This is Hugo. Hugo, these are my parents.
As soon as she said my name, both of her parents stopped pacing and stared at me, and I instantly knew that I was in trouble.
Is this the man that you chose instead of marrying Javier? This is the man that stole your virginity and ruined our business deal?
I had no idea what he was talking about, but suddenly he ran over and started punching me. It was so sudden, and I wasn't expecting, and all I could do was try to block his attacks. He kept hitting me so much that I fell backwards, and once I was on the ground, Jessica's mother kicked me a few times in the head before the restaurant staff got them off of me. Before I knew what was happening, I was taken away in an ambulance and rushed up to surgery. The two of them had broken my jaw in several places and broken several bones as well. When I woke up, I was in immense pain, and standing in my recovery room were my parents, my sister, and Jessica. It hurt to talk, but I needed to know what had happened and why I had been attacked. What happened? Why did they attack me?
Yeah, we've been wondering that too, but Jessica here wouldn't tell us until you woke up.
I could tell that my own family was eyeing Jessica skeptically, and I couldn't blame them, to be honest.
I'm sorry, Hugo, but I didn't tell you everything. You see, years ago, my parents had set up an arranged marriage for me. One of their best clients had a son our age, and in order to make an important merger, they had demanded that I marry their son. However, I didn't love him, and to make matters worse, he was abusive and constantly would hit and slap me for no reason. And so I left him, and my parents' business suffered as a result. Since then, they have hated everyone that I ever date. However, this time when I told them that I met someone, they seemed genuinely happy for me, but it was just a ruse.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, they better pay for this hospital bill, It's going to cost a fortune for my surgery and all my recovery too.
Pay? Why would they pay you? I mean, sure, it was tragic what they did, but they can't help but be passionate about protecting me.
Protecting you? Protecting you from what? I never and would never hurt you, and my body is in pieces because they attacked me unprovoked. So yeah, they should pay for the damage that they caused. Just then, the hospital room door burst open, and Jessica's parents marched in. I thought for sure that they had come in to finish the job, and sure enough, her father began to charge towards the bed when my sister intercepted him.
You vile monster. You ruined our daughter. I'll make you suffer for ruining our business.
My sister tripped and then shoved Jessica's father so that he fell back into his wife, before she then started calling for security, who thankfully showed up and escorted Jessica and her parents out of the hospital before they could cause any more problems. Over the next few weeks, I spent a lot of time in the hospital, recovering until I was finally released. Thankfully, my family stayed with me the whole time, as Jessica's parents had tried on more than one occasion to sneak in and attack me again. I was forced to put a restraining order against them with the police. Oddly enough, when I filed for it, the officers that took my information from me already knew who I was talking about and encouraged me to arm myself, as they had known that Jessica's parents weren't stable people. And so I bought myself a stun gun and then went and spoke to a lawyer about suing them so that I could recover some of the thousands of dollars I had to spend on medical bills. As it turned out, they had been caught on camera, both at the restaurant and in the hospital, and coupled with the testimonies from my doctors, I had all the evidence I would need. Weeks before our court date, though, I began taking self-defense classes, as I didn't want to get caught off guard again. And it was after one of these classes that I was ambushed by Jessica's parents.
Looks like we finally were able to get you alone. We'll make you regret what you did to our daughter.
What is wrong with you two? You do realize that I didn't know your daughter when she left Javier, right? That was years ago. I had nothing to do with what happened to them. You two are seriously insane, and I'm warning you to stay away from me.
Ah, the poor little idiot is warning us. Maybe we should walk away then, huh?
And just like that, Jessica's mother lunged at me, trying to scratch my eyes out, but I was ready for her, and I grabbed her wrist and instead threw her through the air. Seeing his wife get thrown like that, her father then also lunged at me, but I was ready for him too, and I had pulled out my stun gun and I electrocuted him until he passed out. Her mother had been knocked unconscious where I had thrown her, and I then called the police. When they arrived, some people that had witnessed the whole thing stood up for me, and so only Jessica's parents were taken away and arrested. It was the perfect thing for me, as it meant that they would be in jail on the day of our court date. Once the judge heard that, he awarded me the $20,000 that I was asking for, but an additional $130,000 for the pain and suffering that Jessica's parents were continuing to put me through. He even strengthened the restraining order against them and made it so that if they broke it again, that they would each serve 10 years in prison. I was so relieved, although I had no guarantee that they would abide by it. After all, they had broken it once before, but at least my medical bills were all paid for, and I had enough money now to buy myself a house. A few weeks later, Jessica called me and was begging me to take her back.
Please, Hugo. It was all just a really big misunderstanding. Please, I still love you.
After what your parents did? Are you serious?
Of course I am, and once you apologize to them and give them back their money, things will get better, I promise.
Have you gone insane? What do I have to apologize for?
They're just passionate people. They didn't mean anything about what they said. Plus, if you don't give them their money back, then they'll go bankrupt. Please, Hugo. I thought you loved me.
I did, until I found out how insane you and your parents are. Jessica, do me a favor and lose my number. I don't ever want to hear from you or your parents ever again. And with that, I hung up on her and blocked her number. I couldn't believe that she actually expected me to not only give her parents their money back, but to take her back as well. It took some time, but a few years later I did start to date again, and I'm happy to say that I finally found someone normal and good. Her name is Rebecca, and she is everything that I had thought that Jessica was. She works for a charity and runs events to raise money for sick children. And top of that, both her parents and mine are becoming best friends. They're not only normal, but are wonderful people that raised a wonderful daughter too. I could not be happier. As for Jessica, well, she was forced to let her parents move in with her after they were forced to file for bankruptcy. And with them living with her, Her love life is and always will be in shambles as they harass and attack everyone that she meets. The crazy thing is that somehow they haven't been arrested yet, but I have no doubt that that won't last forever. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.